One of the big lessons that you learn as a product manager is you have an immense amount of responsibility. Straight out of business school, I had responsibility for a $300 million P&L.
Wow.
And I had to do that without direct authority over the individuals that I needed to rally to be able to grow that business. And so you learn to take some time, breathe deeply, get to know people, understand what drives them, understand how to align them and influence them appropriately to be able to achieve that next level.
Is product management something you would advise people to look at if they're in college stage and trying to determine where they want to put in applications in the job market?
That's a great question.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Experts Uncut. Excited for another recording today. I have with me Jon Sonnenschein. Hey Jon, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
Hey Simon, thanks for having me on.
Excited to introduce everyone to Jon. We met, I want to say, at least a year ago. It was back in October 2023 in New York at a conference, and just really enjoyed that initial conversation about who is Jon and your background, experience, and career, and didn't think that we'd fast forward and be on a vidcast recording 12 months later, but I'm glad that we kept in contact. So thank you.
Well, thank you. You're too kind.
So do a quick overview and intro, and then we'll jump right in. But for many who don't know, and if you don't know, please do reach out to Jon on LinkedIn. Jon is the former CEO of Earth Solutions. He has several exits under his belt. Most recently was an operating partner at the private equity firm Bregal Sagemount, growth-focused firm with over $7.5 billion in committed capital. Jon holds an MBA in economics from the University of Michigan and an MBA from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. So a very impressive background. We like to start these off, Jon, with going right back to the beginning and try to get a bit of insight in how things really ultimately kicked off for you. And you started in product management, if that's correct.
Yeah. Well, I guess again, thank you for the really kind intro. I really kind of think of myself as just a kid who grew up in the Midwest and had the opportunity to go to some great schools and learn from some fantastic people. After I finished my MBA at Northwestern, I started out in product management. It scratched the itch of a couple of different things. I think one was I had aspirations somewhere down the line to lead a business. And product management felt like a path to help me get closer to doing just that, to being a bit of a general manager.
Mm-hmm.
And the second was I had some aptitude around helping people get to the core of what an opportunity was, and analytically understanding it from a data-driven perspective and rallying those stakeholders to move forward, make change happen, and help grow a business.
And was there some conversation, or was it multiple conversations that kind of led you from, economics to broader business management, and someone said product management is the path to take, and and that will kind of get you there? Or is it more you fell into the role and just doubled down and found a home there, and the rest is history?
So I was recruited out of Kellogg at Northwestern into a product management role. I interviewed at a number of different companies. I looked at a variety of different opportunities. I was coming from experience in management consulting and from experience in actually being involved in a turnaround, but being involved in an analytical role in that process. So the transformation for my career, or the movement in my career, was away from more of an advising type role into one that was more of a kind of practical, hands-on executional role. And that's what I loved about that opportunity, and that's what ultimately made me take it.
So fast forward a couple of decades later, you're sitting in the seat at a private equity firm, right? Ultimately advising the CEOs that had the same position that you did, and holding board positions. What was it like? I mean, that first 6 months to a year in PE, when you'd raised from PE, they'd ultimately been your key stakeholders. What was it like sitting on the other side of the table?
So I had a long introduction to the folks at Bregal Sagemount.
Okay.
And I think if anybody is interested in pursuing an opportunity in private equity, it's really great to get to know the investors well, to understand what their culture is, how they operate. It's going to be far more valuable than what you're going to read on their website or what you're going to be able to glean from talking to their references, the companies that they've worked with historically. So I had the opportunity initially to work with Blair Greenberg um, and with Kurt Whitty on truckstop.com. Truckstop was a great portfolio company for
Yeah.
Bregal Sagemount, an amazing kind of load board that was bringing together carriers and shippers in a unique way. And they wanted to add an additional green shoot to the investment, find another opportunity for future growth, and do so in a strategic way. And so I had the opportunity to work early with them and with that management team to evaluate opportunities to bring payments to their value proposition as a catalyst for future growth.
Okay.
It was meaningful. It was meaningful to be able to have that experience with Blair, with Phil Yates over at Sagemount, and to have it with the members of the truck stop team, and to understand a little bit more about what that relationship would be like on an ongoing basis, as an operating partner in the future.
Yeah.
So I convened several days of work sessions, and helped really divine where those opportunities were, and help the team do something that they couldn't necessarily do on their own, which was to build out that broader business plan and to do so in a way that would align with the interests of Sagemount and their future investor, which happened to be Iconic Capital.
Very cool. You were at Sagemount for, I mean, 7+ years. Where's your head at specifically for John? Is there passion in the growth aspect of starting with an earlier stage firm, being in the CEO position, in the control seat effectively, or are you scanning as well for other roles that allow you to kind of broadly apply capital, kind of in a PE setting? Like, where's your passion?
Yeah, so my role with Sagemount evolved over time.
Okay.
From that first experience with Truckstop into an initial foray as a portfolio CEO, again, an opportunity for us to really understand how it is that we operate together, and to prove out that relationship and build on that relationship. And I think that's a really positive and productive way for people to get involved in the portfolio operations role, is to have been a
Mhm.
portfolio CEO. And that was at Earth Solutions in Columbus, Ohio. And then
Okay.
from there, I transitioned into a full operating partner role where I worked exclusively with the portfolio companies and helped consult with their CEOs and their management teams to help them achieve something that they couldn't on their own. Your question was like, what's next for me? It's interesting because I think, like every other human being, we get very involved in where we are today, and continuity, momentum, inertia, however it is that you think about it. And I'm no physicist, very clearly. um, the it really carries on, and I think we all kind of get into that movement and like get very comfortable with that. I've
Okay.
had the opportunity now to kind of take a step back, think a little bit about where it is that I want to be. And I think of the experiences that I've had in the past 7 years, the best experience that I've had was actually expanding, building, rallying that team in Columbus, Ohio at Earth Solutions as the CEO of that business. And so I'm very much focused on how it is that I take a similar team in a similar space in vertical SaaS and
Mhm.
help them achieve something that they couldn't even imagine on their own today. That business will likely be a lower mid-market business. So
Okay.
very specifically, like somewhere in that kind of 10 to 20 million in ARR range, where the team just needs to be able to bring it together and get it to the next level.
One thing in my interactions with you that seems consistent, you seem very focused, very passionate, very positive, but also quite calm and collective, personality wise. Is that one? And if it is, where does it come from? And are there other things as well that you've used that have kind of tied together your experiences in leadership effectively that have helped drive some success? That'd be interesting to hear.
Uh, Thank you. That's a really kind statement. I think some of that comes from just the experience of being a product manager.
Okay.
I think one of the big lessons that you learn as a product manager, and the analog or the connection between it and either the role of the CEO or the role of an operating partner, is you have an immense amount of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
When I started at Ameritech, at the Baby Bell in Chicago, which ultimately got rolled up into AT&T, straight out of business school, I had responsibility for a $300 million P&L.
Wow.
And I had to do that without direct authority over the individuals that I needed to rally to be able to grow that business. And so you learn just based on the role itself, the responsibilities of that role, to take some time, breathe deeply, get to know people, understand what drives them, understand how to align them and influence them appropriately to be able to achieve that next level. And in
Mm-hmm.
many cases, they can't fully imagine it because, again, this goes back to my point about kind of inertia and momentum. They're just kind of where they are.
Yeah.
They're thinking about what's immediately ahead of them because that's what they've been focused on for so long. So you need to really, again, be smart about asking the right questions, getting to know them deeply, getting to know what drives them, and finding the ways to break down organizational barriers, to bring them together and unite them around a cause.
Love it. So would you say if someone, turn back the clock again to kind of your college days, I mean, you were hired into a role that you ultimately, I mean, I have a feeling you would have ended up in the CEO position, irrelevant of where you'd gone straight out of college. That's just my gut feel. But is product management something you would advise people to look at if they're they're at the college stage and trying to determine where they want to apply their focus or where they want to put in applications in the job market? Or
That's
it's
a
more,
great question.
it's a tough one.
Um,
Your kids are ultimately,
yeah, that's
yes.
I almost feel like it's too broad of a question, Simon,
Yeah.
because it really is going to relate back to who that individual is, and
Mhm.
everyone's going to find their own unique path to get where they need to be. If you ask me just kind of broadly about the needs of the lower mid-market SaaS CEO and like
Mhm.
where it was that I ended up with Earth and what contributed to that, which I think is part of your question as well
Oh,
here.
absolutely.
Um, I think that a big part of lower mid-market or growth equity, private equity, is about helping that team go to the next level. Some people might call it professionalization or just maturization of the business, maturity of the business. And so there are a couple of things that come with that. Um, the expectation that you're going to be able to accelerate sales
Mhm.
purely by focusing on the funnel and trying to drive more leads into that funnel and watching funnel conversion rates and maintaining focus on the go to market, I think is a necessary step, but I don't feel like it's fully sufficient to be
Mhm.
able to help these organizations get to that true next level, which is what we did at Earth. I
Okay.
think what we brought there was an understanding, and this gets back to your point about product management, an understanding also of who our customer was and
Mm-hmm.
the problems that they were trying to solve. And that gave us the ability to really manipulate all of the levers in the marketing mix, and help us build out the next level of offering, which drove not only immediate organic growth, but created a platform for continuing organic growth. I think the business is probably growing at kind of a continued 20 odd percent CAGR right now,
Nice.
since I left in 2019. And
Very
it's
nice.
currently a Blackstone company.
Okay.
And again, I don't think you get there without having some muscle that you've developed around product management, whether it's your own experience having been one,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you've consulted into a product organization, or you've kind of largely, maybe you've touched a technology organization, but there's something that's kind of right around product that helps you have that firsthand experience to be able to throw those value creation levers as well.
Yeah, I love that. So it's ultimately a constant focus or desire, and maybe it's there's also some empathy applied in there to care what the customer wants, not just now, but also keep revisiting as their needs change, as you're planning the go-to market.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, again, alluding back to the experience that I had, and we all have put together these really interesting constellations of experience, right? I had formal training in product management and what it was back in those early days at Ameritech
Mhm.
AT&T. And T. And then I got to see what it was to have a founder vision-led organization through my days out in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And I think it's the union of those two things that you start to wrap it in the layer of, wow, I really need to have a strong understanding of the voice of the customer to be able to bring something together that has ongoing, sustained value creation opportunities that can truly scale,
Mhm.
in and of itself.
Interesting. We've almost ultimately, I mean, don't want to turn this on our side, but we've kind of been through some evolution of thinking on our end as well. Looking at consulting as a service, it's been around since the early 1900s. I mean, effectively, it's been around for hundreds of years, but it's been productized, well over 100 years ago. And early last year, we started to ask that question of what problem are we actually ultimately solving, right? Versus who are we competing against? Where do we exist in the market? What are other firms doing? How can we replicate and do the same things and just kind of ride their coattails? And we got back to we're solving information asymmetry. People are looking for insights and information they don't currently have. And do they want 3 to 4 months worth of project consulting time? Do they want an interim executive? Do they sometimes just need a piece of advice and to pick up the phone and talk to someone who's been there and done that? A lot of the times it's actually the latter.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we build a product and an operating platform that gives clients access to problems that, or solutions that solve their problems, versus force feeding it into something that traditional consultants have been doing for decades? And that, from the way that you're describing it versus it being a product management background, that we applied, seems kind of similar. As trying to understand the voice of the customer and apply it to multiple different industries. So I like that kind of reflection and the way that you talk through it, as from your personal experience as well. Are there themes in the kind of the balance scorecard dashboards that you've built to help scale SaaS companies in the past? Are you constantly evolving core metrics that you rely more on that kind of make it to your summary executive list, or do you rely on the same kind of go to dashboard each time?
I think there are aspects that are always going to be the same that you're going to be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think at the end of the day, it's an expression of the levers in your value creation plan, and those hopefully are few. If you have too many, you're going to choke on them and you're not going to achieve any of them, needless to say. But with that focus, it's kind of a KPI tree It's what's the precursor to that, and if that were to change, what would be happening before that, et cetera, and not getting too overly complex with it. But it needs to align, back with what you're trying to do to ultimately drive the business forward. And I think, to your point, voice of customer is, at the end of the day, it's paramount. Like really understanding and not getting too carried away with being visionary, or assuming that you truly understand where your customer is, what the journey is that they're going through, the problems that they're solving on a day-to-day basis, because those shift over time. So when I think about what we did at Earth, for instance, or what we've done at other portfolio companies as well in my time at Sagemount, a lot of it relates back to building the next level of curiosity on the part of a product organization. It's not necessarily like bringing in super talented product leads. It's, how do we build in that aspect of culture where people always want to improve and always want to understand why something is happening, and they're not necessarily trying to rush to a conclusion? How is it that we break down organizational silos so that our customer support and customer success organizations are integrated with the product organization? And you're seeing kind of the full cycle of not just product reporting over to support, hey, we're releasing, something new, get ready because you may be contacted. Instead, support is bringing in the information and the interactions that they're having on a daily basis or weekly basis. And how is it that we start to layer in some of the large language models here as well? Like, if we're really smart, we're capturing every interaction, or as many of the interactions as possible, that we're having with our clients or our prospective clients. So we're recording our sales calls. We're recording our monthly success calls that the front line is having, and we're pouring those over a large language model to be able to discern what kind of recurring themes are coming up, because we've got such a wealth of material that we can then feed into our processes to understand, like, okay, what's that next value creator for our clients? And at the end of the day, that's what gets us from a, sub 100 to 100, 500, 10, 115% net dollar retention on these businesses.
Interesting. Are you keeping track then of the evolution on AI and LLMs, and already kind of thinking ahead how you'd apply it to your next organization?
Yeah, I think yes, absolutely. And I play with the LLMs daily, and I'm trying to think about so I have to pause here because there's a lot there. There's a ton there, Simon. Like, we could have a whole show about large language models and generative AI and its use, and some of the fallacies that are being built up around its use, as well as some of the fear of the kind of, folks within the businesses, the rank and file, who are like, feel that their jobs are being challenged by its integration into businesses. I think at the end of the day, there are certain things that it does exceptionally well. And one of the things that it does exceptionally well is filtering and summarization. So finding those opportunities to, again, the only way we're going to get there to harness those capabilities is by capturing more raw data.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I come back to is, how is it that we gather as much as we possibly can? Because the models will continue to improve time and time again as they are iterated on. And as we're able to layer in things, not just like, for example, this interview, to figure out what the 5 key takeaways are. I'm sure that ChatGPT would be happy to do that for us.
Absolutely.
But how it is that we can do things like layer in, product usage, as well as customer satisfaction scores from clients who've interacted with different aspects of a SaaS product, for instance. So like, when we can start to put all of that in a blender and harness that, and that's one thing that really helps us improve and see patterns and ideate in a way that we wouldn't have been able to either. It really will unlock our creativity as a team to be, once we have that deep level of understanding. And then I think you can start to apply it as well in the product itself, in the way that you deliver it to your clients. Um, I was actually just talking to somebody the other day about a product that they had a dashboard that they thought was surfacing some of the key learnings or key data points. And the problem is, when you're managing as many people or as many numbers as they were in this dashboard, you start to lose sight. You've just kind of got blindness of a bunch of kind of red and green numbers, and you can't really divine what the key aspects are, or where your key priorities are. Pouring LLMs or generative AI over the top of that to be able to say, like, hey, Simon, here are the three things that you need to work on first this morning. And by the way, I've gone ahead and I've drafted this message or this interaction, or I've teed up this agenda for you as a way for you to coach this individual who needs to be able to improve their performance, this was a performance improvement platform.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the real opportunity lies, and where you start to see amazing returns.
I want I don't know whether this position really exists, but it's kind of a generative AI automation leader in every medium-sized to large company that you can kind of tap into. I mean, I love experimenting myself as well, but it's a little overwhelming with the new applications that just keep coming out and potential use cases, but exciting at the same time, right? There's a bit of a balance.
It's tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. What I would say is, and I cannot claim authorship for this. I want to
Okay.
be really clear. I'm learning from everyone else that I'm interacting with as well, and I'm continuing to iterate through that process.
Yeah.
One person that I spoke with fairly recently is a leader of a business that's in private equity. Talked to me about how he has given every single employee access to their own instance of generative AI.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
And he asks these employees to just try it out, one thing a day,
Yeah.
see what you can get it to do, experiment with it. It's not that different than the experiences that I had back in the Valley, where we would take the whole team and once a month or once a quarter, again, depending on the needs of the business and how we needed to refresh or whether we were kind of in a crunch time,
Hmm.
we'd give people a day to just hack. And we would put people in kind of sometimes the strangest of combinations, or we'd allow them to just, do it on a voluntary basis and kind of raise their hands and work cross-functionally in unique teams that they configure themselves to just hack on a problem that they saw, whether it had commercial viability or not, to just unleash some of that creativity. And again, I think that generative AI, by default, it's a means to an end.
Hmm.
So the more we can experiment with it, the more we can understand what those ends are that it helps us achieve, the more we can apply it in a meaningful and productive way into our products and into our workflows daily.
And I wonder, I love that concept. I wonder if we can apply that outside of tech and even into non-tech firms, is for them to have a day, a year, or a week, right? Kind of these automation, operational improvement hackathons internally, and give the non-tech teams of, his access to these applications and go, theorize and hypothesize about areas that you could improve in your own work or your team's work using these applications, and kind of come back and present those, but in a no judgment fashion, right? Like there's no wrong answers. Like, this is, we're all testing and experimenting almost as scientists together globally, right? In every different business that exists. It's a fascinating time, there's no doubt. But I think that would help, because otherwise people get overwhelmed with the news stories and the updates and being sold on products that include those features that may or may not work for them. That kind of gives them the freedom to test. That could be fun.
I think it relates back to two things that we've been talking about here. I think one of the things that it relates back to, in a kind of light touch way, is to
Mhm.
be welcoming in more perspective around the needs of the customers and aligning with those. What can happen, and I think the second is it aligns with a cultural value around kind of psychological safety and everybody understanding that we're in a learning organization and that we're on a journey together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of value in being able to do that. Naturally, you also kind of get a bit of a refresh as well to break away from your daily routine and to be able to take on something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting through all of those lenses to be able to, apply the kind of hacking concept, as long as people don't feel like there's some kind of pressure of like, oh, I must deliver something within this day. It's got to be marketable. If it doesn't, then, I'm a failure or something like that. It's got to be a kind of failure-free zone where,
Mm-hmm.
again, we're just trying to unleash creativity, learn more about ourselves, team up in unique and different ways, and continue that experimentation and iteration. And, maybe something amazing comes of it. Maybe nothing comes of it this time, aside from the fact that, Jon and Simon got the opportunity to work together in a way that they hadn't before.
Yeah, that problem solving mindset. I love the aspect of no judgment around failure, that freedom to play. It's almost childlike, right? Putting yourself in that sandbox, and that's how real creativity can happen. Well, I want to say thank you again, Jon. I'm extremely excited to see where you land and the next organization that you're leading, and in the open job positions that you have, and trying to find people in my network that might want to come and work for you. I think you're an inspiring leader, and there's a reason that you've been able to replicate your successes multiple times over. That's there's a little bit of luck in those types of things, but people in your position know how to do that. So it's exciting to watch from the sideline. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can keep in contact. But thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it.